We started with a little bit of a theme when it came to our presentation today. So we are going to kind of present it in a little bit of a flight-themed presentation because we're all first in flight. And it's also October 1st, which it feels like the year is running by so quickly. And I imagine you all have a month plus under your belt from the school starting. So I want to just like in terms of an agenda, kind of introduce Brisk for those of you who don't know Brisk. If you do know Brisk, hopefully I'll show enough things today that are like, oh, I didn't know Brisk could do that. We introduced a lot of new features. One of them we actually launched today. So unless you have checked out Brisk in the last 24 hours, I think there will be new information for you all. But also want to create space for Q&A. You know, every state we work with is a little bit different. The instructional priorities you all have look different. And so want to create space to hear kind of what's top of mind for you as you're thinking about AI. One of the things that I firmly believe is that AI is not a singular product, is it's in some ways a strategy. It is, you know, a set of risks and opportunities. And so rather than just talking about Brisk as a product, I'd love to better understand what you all are thinking about more broadly, because ultimately AI is not just one thing, it's many things. So just a little bit of by way of introduction on myself, if I haven't met you before. My name's Arman. I started Brisk 2.5 years ago, but I've spent my entire career working in education. I started my career in 2016 at the White House in the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, actually working with the Department of Education on STEM education and E-rate programs. And from there, I spent 5 years at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, a philanthropy that was focused on being able to drive high quality student outcomes by building project-based learning solutions. And so I led a team there called Notebooks. And from there, I spent a lot of time during the pandemic working with educators, felt, a couple of convictions that I'll share later with you, but really felt that I wanted to do something that was a little bit different. And so started Brisk in 2023, and I'll share a little bit more about that. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the thinking behind Brisk. I'm also going to like look for questions or thoughts or reflections on kind of what I'm sharing as well. So happy to stop at any point. So the first thing is I'm going to start with what I feel like is the average teacher laptop if you open it up today, which is the number of different tabs and tools that teachers are using. In fact, the like average teacher in the US is using 150 plus different edtech tools, applications, websites. And in some ways, working during the pandemic, seeing how educators had to transition all of their instruction online, it felt like we started to build this. Yeah, I feel seen. I feel like every educator is just like, what happened? Even 10 years ago, it feels like it was like a little bit more manageable, but particularly post-pandemic with a lot of one-to-one devices, it just feels like a little bit out of control. Whether it be learning management systems, a bunch of different curriculum products, assessment products, SIS systems. It just feels like so much of teaching has become just switching between different tabs. And yeah, it's actually this screen's giving me anxiety. So maybe I'll go to the next one, which is the instructional cycle. And in some ways, I feel like education at its very core, what high quality instruction looks like, it can be really simplified to a couple of different steps, right? And in some ways, what we've seen is that these edtech tools, rather than kind of layering on the connectivity of instruction, have in some ways fragmented it. And so, as I started to think about starting Brisk, one of the things that I was concerned about was that AI would in some ways reinforce this notion rather than reinforcing this like instructional coherence. And so, the reason why we ended up building Brisk a little bit differently is because we wanted to start with this thesis that the magic of teaching, the most important part of teaching, is really the interconnection between different stages of the instructional cycle. And so as a result, we ended up building an extension that could sit right on top of everything you're doing. So on top of your curriculum, on top of your LMS, on top of your assessments platform, and everything in between, that could have the context that you do so that you don't have to continually repeat yourself or copy and paste into a different platform. And so in some ways, the highest compliment that I think an educator paid Brisk was like, it's almost that like invisible glue. In some ways, we don't want to be out in front making you think about Brisk all the time when you don't need to. In some ways, our value we think is like when you don't even need to think about Brisk, but then when you need to, it's right there. And that's really something that I think is differentiated with Brisk compared to other tools out on the market, is just that we really fundamentally think that there is value when a teacher is not thinking about our product. And so, as I kind of mentioned, we sit on top of almost every tool that you're already using, whether it be Google or Google Workspace like slides and presentations and Google Form quizzes or Microsoft Office. We recently introduced a Microsoft integration, student assignments and your learning management systems. I know that many districts in North Carolina work with Canvas, and so we'll kind of show you a little bit deeper there about how we integrate. But this is really important that wherever you are as an educator, we will be there and we will support. And so because we started with this approach that we actually don't want to be out in front and we want to be hidden when you don't need us, we've been able to grow really quickly. So 1 in 5 teachers in the US hasn't just signed into our product once, but has actively installed it and using it today. And that is something that is really important to us, not just whether you have a new user, but whether you keep that user because they're continuing to use our product. And so one of the other things that's super important, one of the things I worked on at the White House was data privacy. And so we partnered with districts in North Carolina to make sure that we are aligned with those standards that the North Carolina DPA requires. And so this has also been recognized by Common Sense Media, where we hold a 93% rating. And we're also part of, the EdSafe AI Alliance and other specific ways in which we can demonstrate our commitment to security and privacy. One of the things that I think, there are a lot of AI products out there. I think, my hot take is that if you're an educator that's using one AI product only, you're probably not doing it right in some ways, right? Because all these different tools have different strengths and weaknesses. I think the areas that Brisk really excels is we really fundamentally believe that AI is not just a nice to have feature. We don't have things like joke generators. We're really focused on it driving outcomes. And so the way we think about that is being able to demonstrate through studies and other means of being able to show what you're doing when you're generating feedback using Brisk. It's targeted, it's timely, and that's actually allows your students to stay in productive struggle and drive that outcome at the end of the day, which is students' performance on, for example, a state assessment. And so that's really what we're locked in on, and that has kind of shaped our product roadmap and why Brisk looks different than other products today. The other focuses for us are we really focus on integration within the tools that you're already using and also maximizing the value of high quality instructional material. One thing that we've often frequently seen is that some educators or district leaders will think about AI as like teachers pay teachers, which can in some ways be separate from what your high quality instructional material looks like. And Brisk, we see AI as this way of being able to connect the context and needs of the classroom, the understanding that you might need to differentiate some tier 1 material to be able to engage a student who can't access it. But at the same time, how can you maintain rigor and ensure that students are building back up to grade level tier 1 material? So really, we focus on alignment with your core curriculum. Any questions before I kind of jump into a demonstration? Cool. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on a couple of things. Brisk, we have a couple of different tools. You're probably familiar with our extension, so we'll start there, kind of do a quick demonstration of that. I'll then start to share a little bit about our web platform next, which allows you to take the context of everything that you're doing with Brisk and essentially generate recommendations that are based on your students' own performance. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our student extension. I'm not going to show it today unless people are interested. And then also talk a little bit about Boost Activities, which is our student-facing tool that allows you to take any material you're looking at and share it with students in a way to engage them and to be able to assess their performance as well. So a lot to cover. So I will get to it. I'm going to see, am I sharing my entire screen or am I sharing a page? Let's see. If I go here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop sharing and then share again. Let's do a window this time. Cool. So I'm gonna start on North Carolina Public Radio. And what you can see here is I have the Brisk extension right here on the bottom corner here. For those of you, it sounds like a lot of people are someone's an old Brisker. You're probably familiar with this extension right here. Some folks don't realize that you can actually drag it around, so it really doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be in a specific place on your web page. In addition, some folks don't realize that they can pin Brisk. And what that allows you to do is you see it right here on the top right corner. If you don't want to see it, you see the extension, you can just press it one time and it'll actually make the extension disappear. And if you want to resummon it, you can kind of summon it there. So I'll start here and say, I really think this is an interesting article that I want to introduce to my students, but maybe it's not at the right reading level for my students. Maybe I'm teaching third graders. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up here. And there's a couple of different functionalities. With Brisk, I can go in and create content. I can give feedback on it. I can change the reading level. And I can also share it with my students and create an engaging AI activity out of it. I'm actually going to start with just changing the reading level. So what we can do here is it's been assessed at a 7th grade reading level. But let's say that I want to actually do a 4th grade reading level. I can go and select that. One thing that maybe you're getting a preview of that other folks won't be able to see is in the future, you'll also be able to select multiple grade levels and change the reading level to several grade levels at the same time. This is a sneak peek preview of something that's coming shortly, but we're really excited about that because often we find that teachers aren't just thinking about, differentiating in one way, but several ways. And that's going to be the same case as for on the language side as well, where you'll be able to select multiple languages too. And you can see that here. So if I want to create a Spanish version and an English version, I can do that as well. But I'll just do English for now. And so when I click change reading level, what it's going to do is it's going to take that context of that article and retranslate it at a reading level that's appropriate for students. We use Lexile, which looks at the length of sentences and the types of words that are used. What you'll notice is if you actually look at the quotes haven't been modified. The only thing that's been modified is the text around it as well. Any questions that's coming up? Oh, it sounds like folks didn't realize that you could summon it. Yeah, that's definitely something that we hear a lot about. I mean, I love Brisk as well, but sometimes it's not showing up in the right place and, it's easier to make it disappear for a bit. I'm going to stop generating here. For those of you who haven't seen this page yet, if you want to rewrite the context, you can always provide additional instructions. You can translate it to a different language. You can ask to make it shorter. You can also add something on. So if I want to create a lesson plan or a vocab list or a resource, we can do that. I'm actually going to add a quiz. So we can create a quiz about this article. What's nice about Brisk is you can create it in different formats. So I have a Microsoft Word file. I have a Google form or a doc. I'm going to just start with a Google form. I'm also going to pick a specific standard that might be aligned with what I want to see. So I'm actually going to go to North Carolina standards, and I'm going to go to the science standards. And I think 7th grade has some content on storms and hurricanes. So I'm going to see if I can find something here about storms. Perfect. So there's a couple of different standards that are directly relevant to high and low pressure systems, which is related to the hurricane that this text is about. And we can go in and create a multiple choice quiz as well. And when we Brisk it, what it's going to do is take that content and start to draft a Google form quiz about it. It would be helpful to know if for folks who have kind of used Brisk before, have you used these functionalities? Do you have any feedback? We find that educators often love the Google Forms quiz integration. One reason is because you can actually get the answers right away. So, you can assign it to your students, but the answer is already set. So you can actually then share it with the student and get a self-graded assessment right away. Cool. Now, let's say we want to keep going. We can add more questions here. We can write another quiz. We can boost it to basically share it with an AI tutor as well. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start somewhere else now. I'm going to start with a YouTube video. This is definitely one of the tools that educators really love, which is the fact that Brisk can read directly from a YouTube video. So we can do a couple of things. We can create content, and you'll see this in a second. So we can say, I want to create a quiz or a rubric or a progress report. I can create a presentation or a podcast. We also have these tools called school-specific tools. And that allows you to actually go in as a district administrator and go in and create new tools that you can share directly with your with your teachers in your district as well. So I'm going to create a presentation to show you what that looks like. We can either collect this, we can remove those standards, we can set the number of slides. With our premium version, you can also include images as well. We also have a sources functionality, which will actually review the internet to find additional sources, and then we'll cite those sources as well. I'm going to pick a specific template. I'm going to use the science template because this seems related. This YouTube video is about ecosystems, and I'm going to Brisk it. And what it's going to do is take that content and start to generate a presentation about it. And it's going to use that transcript of that YouTube video. So if any YouTube video has a transcript, you can use this tool right on top of it. Can I get an indication if folks have seen this tool before? Maybe this is old news and I need to get to the new stuff. Yeah, 80/20 rule is super important for us. So we think that AI should, of course, generate the first version of something, but this is not ready to be shared with a student. And so we need to review it as well. That's something that obviously is really important with AI and something that we definitely encourage. Cool. Catherine says, this is great. New to me. Amazing. Means that me talking is being helpful. And then let's say we have this presentation and we want to create a podcast from it. We could very quickly create a podcast. We could decide the length we want it. We could also attach standards. And in seconds, we can Brisk it and it'll create a podcast directly from this presentation as well. And what I'll also do is share it here so you all can listen to it as well, hopefully. I'm going to keep going. Lastly, what I'll take a second here to kind of share part of our student-facing flow. So what's really neat about Brisk is we can say, I want to create a character chat with these podcast hosts and basically have my student engage directly with this podcast. So I'm going to use Boost Student Activity, and I can pick a couple of different options here. I'm going to pick the tutor option, which will allow me to essentially pick a tutor here. Or I can say I want to actually pick let's actually do a character chat. And so what I can do is I can boost it. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to create you're going to see the content that you're boosting, but you're also going to see a chatbot that's kind of attached to that boost chat. And so the student, we're basically seeing a preview of what the student will see. And they're talking to a Biosphere Explorer today, and they can basically answer questions to be able to demonstrate learning progress. So they're going to define the biosphere and explain its basic components, describe how energy flows through ecosystems, explain the role of nutrients in the biosphere, and identify at least one major biome and its characteristics. So we can do that, but let's say we actually want to also something from our Google Drive. We can go in and take that presentation that we just generated. Hopefully this is it. And incorporate that directly into this. So then when I share it with students, they can review both the podcast and the presentation all in one place as they chat with this Biosphere Explorer. So really neat way to kind of engage your students as well. And I can also share this too, so you all can see what this looks like. And I can show you, if you actually join, then I can show you what demonstrating progress could look like. And let me remember to share this because I always forget to. I can share this with everyone, so you'll all have access to it too. Let's see if we have anyone that's actually kind of joined this activity. No one has yet, but hopefully you all will in a second. There, Vera, thank you for participating. If you want to join and kind of start to answer some questions, we can see the progress that you demonstrate, but I can actually do that here on my end, where I can answer, for example, for biomes around the world, and we can kind of see what this looks like. I want to learn about the desert, and then you can kind of see how students are progressing across these specific questions. Okay, great. We got more people engaging. Jared, I'm going to pick on Jared to kind of see how he's doing. And you can see that he answered different biomes and responded. So you can kind of see how students are demonstrating learning objective progress across this. And now I've decided to pause it because maybe I think Jared is off topic, and I can also download the chat as well right here. Cool. Looks like Randy is showing partial demonstration of explaining the role of nutrients in the biosphere. Well, let me keep going. I keep saying let me keep going, and then I get excited to show something. So I apologize. I'll truly keep going. I'm going to go to feedback. Now, feedback is one of those things that educators love about Brisk. It's probably one of the things that it stands out with because it really demonstrates something that's unique, which is that we meet educators where they're at. When you're looking at a piece of student work, we're going to start right there. So I'm going to show you, if you press the give feedback button, now this doesn't just need to happen directly on a Google Doc. It could be a PDF or an image of student work. I'm going to click the targeted feedback option. I've already uploaded a rubric right here. I can set the grade level. And when I brisk it, what it's going to do is draft feedback directly in the Google Doc comments. And what's really nice is, as an educator, I'm not copying and pasting. I'm not going anywhere else. I can actually see the fact that the content is drafted directly in the comments here, which means that I can go in and actually go in and delete it or change it before I press comment. And that's when it'll be shared with my students. So again, Krista brought up the 80-20 rule. The idea that we're not posting these comments directly on your behalf, that you have to go in and modify them before sharing them, is really, really important to us. Any additional questions on that feature? Cool. Let me see if I can refresh and get some insights here too. What's also I'll highlight here is, now that a couple of students have started responding, we're going to start to draft specific insights about your class based on how they're responding to these questions. So you can see that some students have demonstrated progress on explaining the role of nutrients in the biosphere, and it's students correctly identify that plants obtain nutrients from both the oil, soil, and air, but there's some work that there's limited discussion on the specific roles of different nutrients in the biosphere. So that immediate data is really important as an educator, to be able to know that to be able to address student misconceptions right in the moment. I showed you the targeted feedback tool. One thing that we introduced today is, if you scroll up, it's a little hidden. We have this tool called batch feedback, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we can take any assignment and we can import a whole set of student work. I'm also losing my voice. Great timing. I can take a folder of student work and draft feedback all at the same time. And so I'll show you what that looks like. So I've uploaded 3 assignments here and then drafted feedback. And you can see that it's actually assessed it on different dimensions. Now, I have to go in and approve the feedback. It's going to show up like this. And when it's ready, I can share that feedback back directly with students to ensure that they understand how they can improve their work. All of this is editable. They're all recommendations, and we actually require teachers review the content before sharing it back with students. And you can see here how it's been assessed. So just highlighting a different way in which you can provide feedback on student work. And this helps, especially when you're drafting feedback early on in the writing process. We often find that educators don't have enough time to provide feedback earlier on in the draft writing process. And students are actually asking teachers to brisk their homework because it gives them a chance to be able to revise it earlier on in the process as well. And then one other thing that I know I wanted to cover was our integration with Canvas. This is another tool that I think a lot of people don't realize Brisk can do, which is that we actually can draft feedback directly. We can draft feedback directly in Canvas as well. So we can take this rubric. So there's this rubric right here, and we can say, I want to give feedback in SpeedGrader. And so I can pick one of these specific options. I'm going to pick rubric scoring for now. It's actually ingested the Canvas SpeedGrader rubric. So when I click Brisket, what it's going to do is it's going to take that rubric and start to evaluate it directly on this rubric right here. So you can see stages of the water cycle, sun's role, humans' impact, writing quality. The same specific dimensions of the rubric are already read by Brisk. And then when we want to add them to SpeedGrader, all we have to do is click that button, and the rubrics will be set, and the feedback will also be drafted directly right here. So really streamlining the feedback process to make it more timely as well. Okay, I'm going to take a second because my voice is definitely running out. And jump to the last thing I wanted to share on the feedback process is a tool called Inspect Writing. Now, I know everyone talks about cheating and academic integrity, and I think that I, like many of you, wish we never had to talk about it again because we, trust students, or we realize that part AI will be incorporated into different parts of being able to demonstrate skill sets and knowledge in the future. Of course, there are still really genuine academic integrity concerns by educators. I don't think it's an either or, it's a little bit of both. And so with Brisk, what we decided to do is kind of solve this problem a little bit differently. What if we could just be transparent about how a student completed their assignment? And that transparency itself led teachers to think about the process of creating student work rather than the product. For so long, students have been evaluated on the product, which was reliably a reflection of what the students completed. But in this moment, I think there's an opportunity for us to reflect on what is actually more important. Is it the student's process of demonstrating their skills and knowledge, or the product? And so with Inspect Writing, what we've done is we've created this tool that allows you to essentially understand how a student completes their assignment. You can actually see the copy paste events in the Google Docs history. So then you can ask your student questions about where the content came from, which is much more helpful if you actually think about it, because it's, is this a long quote? Is this from another student? Is this from AI? It's less about is this AI or not, and it's more about how did you complete your work? Did you get stuck along the way? Is that why you went to the internet to go find another source? I think that's really more important in conversation with educators than is this 63% likelihood of being AI, which is just so impossible to even know what to do with in the first place. Cool. Want to check in any questions or feedback? Have folks used the Inspect Writing tool in Brisk before? Anything we can do to improve it? This is just my feedback session, so feel free to just let me know if these features resonate, or if there's other things that we could be demonstrating instead. Okay, I'm going to keep going because we only have so much time. I'm going to show you next, which is our web platform. So for a long time, Brisk was this extension, really helped you as an educator dive into specific parts of I want to give feedback, I want to create content. You saw all of those, but when we go back to that instructional cycle that I shared, one core part we felt like was missing in the world of AI was the adaptation stage. How is the feedback that we're generating actually adapting how I think about teaching the next class? And often educators have to do all that thinking themselves. And we asked, what if all that information we have in Brisk about the feedback you're giving, the boost activity we just shared, the Inspect Writing, the content you're creating, could all almost, what if you could have a separate brain that was also processing all of that information and creating additional recommendations? And so as a result, we built something called Brisk Next, which is really intended to inform what you as an educator need to do next. What you'll see here is there's a search box here. So if you have an idea that you want to get started with, you can put it in here. But it's also going to take everything that we know and start to provide additional recommendations. So when I was generating feedback, I don't know if you noticed, but one of the persistent pieces of feedback that I gave in targeted feedback and also in the Canvas assignment was about students not using specific evidence. So like magic, Brisk has already started to generate recommendations about students who might need additional support with evidence. So here we have a Evidence Hunter Challenge, which is an interactive activity where students compete to find the most relevant textual evidence. We have a deep dive analysis worksheet, and we have a reteach lesson plan for students to be able to think about how they can use in-depth analysis and a step-by-step approach. I also, in a previous demonstration earlier today, created a boost activity on the angle side angle theorem. And we've created specific ideas on how to engage students, whether it be a brainstorm or a tutor, to actually decode angle side angle diagrams. I created, I gave feedback on argumentation and development, and you can see I see additional recommendations here. It's fall time, so some of the other recommendations include, thinking about leaf color changes. So we get better as you start to use Brisk more. But let's say I want to teach about the Civil War just more broadly. What we can then do is generate new ideas in Brisk next. And what we're doing is we're taking the context we have across your classroom and then generating next step recommendations. So you can see there's a slide presentation, a podcast, a resource. We have a debate. We have a character chat to talk about Lincoln's dilemma. We have a Civil War causes web brainstorm, and we have ways that we can assess our students. Now, let's say we want to actually incorporate all of these. Someone else mentioned that they love bundles, so I'll show you a little bit more about bundles. So we can take this Google form quiz. We can take this resource on the on a timeline, the podcast, the presentation, and maybe we want our students to engage with Lincoln as well. 5 different things, and we can create them all together in bundles. We could have also chatted with Next on the right, further iterate on the recommendations here. An example of that would be, I actually want to focus on North Carolina, these specific standards, and provide more and more context, because the more context we have on your request, the better we can do. Now we'll see what we can do when we preview it. And so again, you'll see all the content we created right here, the Civil War quiz presentation that we just generated, a podcast, Google form quiz, a resource on the timeline of the Civil War, and that podcast, or in that chat. And it's Abe Lincoln right there, just minus the tall hat. And we can share it directly, and I'm happy to share this as well if you want to chat through it and see what that could look like. Great. So far, I showed you, just to enumerate all the things I've done, is we started with changing the reading level of the text back over here. We then created a quiz from that. We then said, hey, let's go to a YouTube video. From that YouTube video, created a presentation. From that presentation, we created a podcast. We then used that podcast and that presentation to create a bundle right here. We then went through feedback and we drafted feedback directly in the Google Doc comments. We also saw a little bit about batch feedback, which is the way to take a bunch of assignments and give the feedback all at the same time. We then kind of used Inspect Writing, which is our academic integrity tool. And to cap it all off, we use Next, which is our tool to essentially browse different ideas to basically see how we might be able to look at recommendations about how to engage our class. And so with that, I'll kind of go back and show a couple more next steps to wrap us all up with enough time, hopefully, for Q&A. So if you are more interested in Brisk more broadly and are like, Armand, like you went too fast, there's too many things, too many tabs, you should go check out our Brisk Bites. They cover a lot of the different ways in which you can use Brisk, and we keep them up to date. So today we launched batch feedback, and we already have Brisk Bites kind of focused on them. I'm also going to share this presentation more broadly, so you're welcome to kind of use it as a starting point. You're also welcome to find more resources on our website. We have professional development, printables, different things to kind of do on that front. We also have a community. We have a couple of things. We have Club Brisk, which is our ambassador community. We also have these Teach AI professional badges that you can win through, but basically by going through our certification courses as well. They're kind of brief classes on how to basically use Brisk most effectively. We also are really ultimately grateful. Brisk, we don't really think about marketing. We show up at a couple of conferences, but 90% of the way you all have heard about Brisk is from another educator or another district leader. And so if you do really love Brisk, we'd love for you to share our story. Feel free to reach out, and we'd be also happy to highlight and do a case study with your district or school. I also just wanted to share a little bit about what partnership looks like if that's a path that your district feels comfortable going down. One thing that we find is that Brisk is incredibly powerful if you're using it as an educator to streamline your workflow. But the thing that's missing is often the systematic and rigorous implementation of AI, not just to save time, but to drive outcomes. And so if you're really going to think about outcomes, it really requires support from a customer success manager, professional development, not just to think about using the tool, but how to use the tool effectively to drive outcomes. And so from districts that we partner with, we see that students are able to engage with high quality instructional material. One thing I didn't get to show you was if you had, for example, boosted an online textbook or a PDF, you would be able to add that AI tutor directly to content that you're already sharing with students. And one way we see that showing up is, for example, for tier two scaffolds for tier one material, often we find that teachers have to go somewhere else to find tier two material, which can often stray far away from rigorous tier one material. And so one thing we found is that boosting tier one material is a great way to provide additional supports to get to tier one content. The second piece is that we really find that between the differentiation and being able to change the reading level and language of text, we can really support different types of students effectively and meet them exactly where they are. With our Inspect Writing tool, we found that the districts we partner with, academic integrity doesn't come up at all. You would think that this tool, that Inspect Writing is almost like a gotcha, but what happens is educators just show that they have this Inspect Writing tool at the beginning of the school year, and suddenly they can suddenly trust that their students are thinking about writing their own assignments. And so we've seen that something where actually in some ways we offer the solution, but very few people talk about it now because it's just been a different mindset shift. And lastly, there's a lot of things going on in AI. I'm the first person to tell you that if Sam Altman doesn't know what the future looks like, I'm sure we all are still figuring that out as well. And the biggest thing we can do to be able to support our students in a safe way and in an age appropriate way is to introduce AI in incremental small ways so that our students are able to at least start to build some literacy schools around how they can incorporate AI, not just into their learning process, but in the future, how they can use it as a tool to be productive as they think about 21st century jobs. A little bit about your teachers. We've found that districts that we partner with have higher uptake of their high quality instructional material. Essentially, teachers have less reason to go to places like Teachers Pay Teachers because they're able to build scaffolds directly within their curriculum. We find that they're saving time, which they're then able to reinvest into high quality instructional maneuvers. We are raising the bar for what differentiation can look like in the classroom, and we're able to deliver timely feedback for students. Today, as you may know, I'm the founder and CEO, and I think it's really important for us to be able to partner with districts in North Carolina. So we're happy to provide you additional white glove support and partner together to figure out what the future of AI is together, because ultimately there's no answer that someone in San Francisco can tell you about where this is all going. It really comes in partnership with you all. And we also can focus with your district on how we might be able to align your specific curriculum with Brisk so that you're able to essentially systematically Brisk your entire curriculum. We also provide opportunities for real-time data reports and world-class professional development. Ultimately, AI is a strategy, and that requires partnership at the highest level. So a little bit, I would highly encourage if you have any questions and you want to talk more about what a pilot could look like for this upcoming school year, we're also going to share this in the chat, but I would go to .com/demo. But Jared and Chris are on today and can kind of walk you through what partnership looks like at the for the school year. We try to be affordable, especially for pilots, because we ultimately know that you need to kick the tires on this product. Anyone, including myself or someone else, could do a great demonstration. Ultimately, that's not going to convince your teachers to use the product. That's not going to drive outcomes for your students. It's only by piloting and being able to see the product for yourself and the partnership that it comes with that ultimately will be able to drive outcomes. Lastly, I have maybe 20 minutes for Q&A if we need 20 minutes, but I also need to catch up on the chat. Oh my God, it's Julie from Harnett. Yes, we love partnering with Harnett. One of their first North Carolina partners, and love to see you always at ISTE for most years. Yeah. Vera kind of pointed out Inspect Writingly. works differently. And Jennifer heard about Brisk from Harnett, of course. Julie said the entire team is amazing there. I got through a lot of content, so I'm going to take a break. I think Jared and Krista might need to answer some questions as my voice slowly fades into the background. But anything that I can do, any answers, anything I missed, Jared and Krista?
No, I think you showed everything. I mean, next is obviously my favorite, and also batch feedback as a former middle school ELA and social studies teacher. So happy if anybody has any questions and wants kind of feedback on how to maybe use it in those grade bands, I'd be happy to answer those for you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much usability in terms of like the guided notes or using the presentations to make sure that we're supporting students on IEPs or 504s, just podcasts as well. So love to have that conversation and see how we can support you there.
Well, I will stop sharing. Really appreciate the space. It's very unique to be able to kind of work with a state office of ed to kind of like partner to be able to introduce new tools and instructional strategies. So really appreciate the opportunity and space here.
Thank you, Armand and Jared and Krista. We appreciate it. I did want to take just a minute to share our third-party disclaimer. It's just something that we have to do. So just to make sure everybody understands that we're not endorsing or sponsoring or recommending the product, but we do appreciate them coming and showing you all the wonderful things you can do for free. And everything they showed you was for free. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I will let you get back to the questions now, but we will give you a feedback link at the end. Okay. Okay, thanks everybody. We appreciate you joining. The feedback certificate is there. And if you do that, we appreciate the feedback, but it also gets you a certificate emailed to you that you can keep for CEU credit. Thank you, Randy. Jared. Yeah. Julie.